and welcome to another episode of Triptych Tock, where we have a trio of guests, a current student, an alum, and a faculty member, discuss their different perspectives on a chosen theory topic for 15 minutes or less. This week's theme is devised dance, or choreography, so we'll be asking all three guests the same questions in hopes of getting some different answers. We like to see how viewpoints evolve as they hone their craft, and get a little insight into how they've gotten to where they are now. So I have here with me Jadyn Brick. She's a senior dance major at Dickinson. She's been involved in the Department of Theater and Dance since her first year, and she's excited to finish out her time by working on the Whites Project with collaborator Kristen Kim. We also have Emie Hughes from the class of 2013. She's a modern dance choreographer, photographer, and visual artist. At Dickinson, Emie studied theater arts with a dance major and a psych minor, and was the winner of the Whites Prize for her choreographic work. After graduating, she lived, danced, and worked in New York City for 6 years before moving to Pennsylvania, and she currently lives outside of Philadelphia, where she is making dance, creating botanical photography, and teaching through her new business, Blue Jar. And last but certainly not least, we have Professor Sarah Skaggs. Before arriving to Dickinson College in 2008 to direct the dance program, she lived in New York City for many years, where she ran her own dance company, Sarah Skaggs Dance, and nonprofit Higher Ground Projects Incorporated. Her works have taken place everywhere from opera houses to parking lots. So let's start with a bit of a simple question. How do you approach dance and creating? Do you have a central thesis or guiding principle for your work? Sarah, we'll start with you, and then Emie and Jadyn, whenever you want to jump in, go ahead.
Wow. Well, thanks, Nina, for hosting. It's great to see our alum, Emie Hughes, and to see our current Weiss Prize winner, Jadyn Brick. Wow. Okay. I could write a dissertation on how I approach dance. Many people ask that question because dance is so abstract. I always say I have parallel tracks. I'm reading, books, and I'm interested in certain things, and I'm also in the studio moving. And sometimes they overlap, right? So I start by moving, and somehow I have a cluster of movements, and then I'm reading stuff maybe about, the Shakers, Ann Lee and the Shaker religion. I'm thinking about evangelical speaking in tongues, all kinds of things like that. I'm interested in ecstatic dance. And then all of a sudden, these things start to build. My phrases start to build. So it's kind of a combination of like intellectual interest in things I'm reading and also moving and how they come together to create something. I'll keep it simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'll go next. Similar to Sarah, in my process, so I'm a visual artist and also a dance artist. So a lot of my work I'll be making simultaneously. So I'll be making photographs, or I just recently I've been making a lot of cyanotypes, which is it's a photographic process using botanical prints. So the UV light exposes the plants on the paper. So I love doing those, and I've kind of realized that the shapes in my artwork mirror the shapes in the dances that I've been making. So, and it's always an amazing moment when I kind of like make that connection of like, oh, it's the same. But yeah, I don't like start with sometimes I'll start with a question, but generally I just like go to what I'm interested in. Go from there.
Okay, I'll speak next. I would say I actually tend to start more with ideas, and so then if I want to explore a certain idea, then I'm asking myself, how can I investigate this more through movement? I'm pretty interested in improvisation in general, so that's an approach that I use a lot in my work. And I would also say I'm largely a collaborator, and so even if I'm in a position of choreographer with dancers, I'm always thinking about my relationship with the dancers as a collaboration, and I'm interested in including everybody's ideas and experiences into the work.
Okay, so given all of your differing perspectives on approaching, creating, and actually creating itself, do you have like a collaborator you really enjoyed working with, or have you formed a particularly strong partnership over the course of your career? We'll start with you, Emie, and then anyone else can jump in.
Sure. So let's see. I have a couple dancers who I've collaborated with a lot. I think it's really important to me to work with. I make mostly duets of me and another dancer dancing. So it's really important to me that they are like dear friends in many instances, just because I think that there's this level of intimacy that I want to have in my process. So there are a couple dancers who I keep working with over and over again, who I actually met abroad when I was studying in Italy. And now we're both near Philly, so we can work together.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, back when I was living in New York as an artist, I had a small dance company of 5 people, and a lot of them were friends, went to Juilliard together, so it was kind of nice. So many times people make the choreographer is sort of like the sole director, and they make the movement and they put it on the dancers, and then the dancers have to do it exactly. They're like, dancers used to think of themselves as tubes of paint. Well, that paradigm is shifted, and that the choreographer may come in and in this collaborative way, like the way I used to work with in my company, is, have a few movement ideas, and then we all collaborate together to do them, to see where we connect, where we disconnect, how close, we call it like near and far, and where we're doing. We might be working in syncopation and canons. And so we kind of find the choreography together rather than me slapping it on the dancers. So that kind of synergy is really, really important. And now that since I've been at Dickinson, I have a dancer in New York, Corey Kresge, who I've been working with for the last 10 years. I make movement and she makes it, and it's just a dialogue back and forth. And Emie was a little part of that process too in New York a few years ago. So it is collaborative, but it takes other bodies in the studio with you to kind of find that piece together, so to speak.
Yeah, for me, I would say I haven't been making work long enough to have a very consistent partner or collaborator, but definitely it's been really exciting to work with Kristen Kim, who's an English major and very involved in design work and theater here, on the Weiss project together. And in the past, I've collaborated with people, it's really only been with other dancers and movers. So it's been really interesting to talk with somebody who's like really only focused on design, and noticing that we still have a lot to talk about in terms of ideas and themes and responses to the space we're working in. So I'll say Kristen for now. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people might be listening to this and thinking, that's very cool, but how do I get started? So I guess we'll go around. Do you have any tips or tricks or secrets on how to actually get started with the creation process? And Jadyn, we can go to you first, and then Emie and Sarah pop in whenever you feel like.
One thing that's been helpful for me is sort of like a choreography hack has been like using words. So a lot of times I start with like a free write, as in sort of just like writing about whatever comes to mind on the question or the topic. I pick out words or phrases from that and sort of try to dance those words or phrases. I also use a lot of tools from Dance Exchange, which is based in Tacoma Park. And so they have some sort of deeper, more structured tools to do choreography that are about like really deconstructing the word and translating that into movement. So that's been really helpful for me.
I guess I'll go next. I think I always, as a person and as an artist, I put a lot of pressure on myself to, I grew up doing ballet, so being a ballet dancer. So I'm very into like rules and structures and like being productive. But I think for me, the biggest lesson of like how to, like what a trick would be is to give myself permission to not be making things. and to really like trust that that's part of my process, and that it always comes back around for me. And so the time when I think I'm not being very productive, that's the time when I can look back and say, oh, like this and this and this and this all came from that, like, little chunk of time where I thought I wasn't being an artist, or, a dance artist, or whatever, like, ideas I always put in my head. But that's my tip.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think there's such a mythology of the artist walks into his or her studio and picks up the paintbrush or picks up the quill or starts to look in the mirror and starts to make their dance and make their art. But the pressure of that is ridiculous. The artificiality of it is as if the creative juices are just flowing right at that time. And I used many years ago start like that, but that was a disaster. That is not where creativity, it's not an on and off switch. So, I mean, I have to say that sort of like the way I explained it to like, people is to say, like, imagine you're sitting at the piano and you're just riffing on some things. You're just playing and riffing. It's not like you're starting with a big idea, like my piece is about global warming and I'm going to articulate that. No, I'm at the piano, or I'm just in my house most of the time, like my bedroom, my living room, and I just start moving, and I see that I'm moving in a certain way, and then I start to structure it, and then I'm like, oh, okay, so then I start to put it in blocks of like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, like make swatches, so to speak, of like movement, fabric things, and then I go to the studio and I start to put them together, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is added up to 5 minutes. What is this movement suggesting to me? What is this piece about? It tells me, right? But the point is that I could just start moving now and just start making something. There's no separation. There's no big pressure about I'm the creator and now I would enter my studio. No. Just start making and drawing right now. Do it.
Okay, so as you're making and creating, we'll wrap it up today with just a small little debate, if you want to debate it. But how does stillness or silence or not dance figure into your dance process? And we'll start with you, Sarah, if you don't mind. I'm sure you probably have some thoughts about this, and we'll go around.
Of course, I have many thoughts. Stillness is very important to dance, okay? I mean, Steve Paxton, who invented contact improvisation, talks about these little tiny dances. Even if we're still, our body is still doing all these real tiny dances. And so recognizing that is recognizing the tiny dances when you're still is a beautiful thing. And then also for students, I mean, the first thing when they start to show me their work, I go, okay, you need to insert 3 places of stillness. You need to stop. You need to pause. You need to freeze. I use those 3 words. What's pausing, freezing, being still, right? And so it's the only way that you can give the rest of the dance structure. So stillness is key to dance.
Sure. Okay, I'll go next. Stillness. I think when I was at Dickinson, that's something that I struggled with. Because I think as artists, we're taught to like not move to the music, because it's like important to have your own idea and not let the music drive what the work is. And so I kind of like went around, I did a bunch in silence, and then I did a bunch not in silence. And I think my most recent piece I just made, I showed it at the Delaware Art Museum, and it was outside. It was really cool. And so there were these moments of silence in this like really slow section at the beginning, and then it like turned into like this, it was followed by like this pop Tame Impala song. And so it was just cool to like finally be able to be like, oh, I get it now, you know, because I could do both, and they were both very effective because they needed each other to exist, you know. But yeah, it's a lifelong thing, but I'll stop here.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think stillness allows you to appreciate the movement more, and so there's a balance that needs to happen. And it, I mean, obviously depends on the work, how much, if you're doing a piece about stillness, I mean, that could be really interesting. I mean, I wouldn't say it's something I've explored a lot in particular, but it's definitely really important in dance.
Okay, so that is all the time we have left today. I just want to thank Emie and Jadyn and Sarah for making the time to be with us today. You can catch Jadyn's Weiss Prize work next semester, and you can check out Emie Hughes and what she's doing at Blue Jar at bluejarllc.com. I hope our viewers learned a little something about dance and what it takes to create it, and then anyone can do it. You just got to get started making art, and maybe you feel inspired. So that was our last one of the year. Join us next semester for a whole new lineup of Dickinson students, Dickinson alumni, and Dickinson faculty. And yeah, have a good one.